my audio, but hi,
Okay.
I
Hi.
did
Yeah.
it.
Are you on your audio?
I think I am. Can you hear
I think.
me?
Yeah. Well, I can hear you. Yeah. Welcome,
I am.
everybody. We're just
Welcome.
we're just finishing up a little bit of the technical aspects of the show.
We love tech. I love tech. It's one of those things that I have to put stickers everywhere to really convince myself that I do, even though I know I'm lying to myself.
Make sure you plug in.
I do love tech. I just don't love figuring it out.
Putting it together.
All of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Using it, great.
Yeah. We love it when it works, right?
Yeah.
And then it's always a big challenge about. All right, now what do I've done? What have I done?
What have I not done?
Or
why
or
why is it not working?
yeah. Or what have I not done? Yes, yes,
Well,
yes, for sure.
anyway, now that you can hear me loud and clear, hello.
Yes. Hello, hello,
Good to see
Fitzy.
you.
Yeah, good to see you too, and everybody else that's joining us at this moment or in the future. How has now? Okay, so how has been your week?
Okay, the reason why Rick, okay, just like full disclosure here, the reason why Rick, I am assuming, but I think it's a good guess. The reason he was hesitating is because he probably knew what I was going to answer because he already asked me this question. And my answer was, I had a really rough week
Yeah.
because, as usual, life just prepares me for this conversation. So we were going to talk about doing the work. I
Hmm.
had to do the work,
Hmm.
just as as late as a couple hours ago.
So if your hair is out of sorts or whatever, yeah,
This is the magic of makeup and fixing your hair. You
yeah,
can achieve this in 15-20 minutes.
yeah.
It took a little longer today.
It took me all day to get mine just right. It just won't lay down properly.
That's amazing that you don't have to deal with any of that.
I just I just thanks Joanne for joining us today. And yes, you are here. Um yeah, no, I just keep washing my gray away, except for down here. I just but I did brush it out and kind of groomed it up a little bit
Yeah, it
too.
looks nice and neat.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a yeah, so we've had a bit of a contrast of weeks because I've been riding what I've been calling this week riding the rails, and I'm not sure if I shared my analogy about railroad tracks, but I might have at our show last week.
Yeah,
Gone,
you did
yeah,
last
I
week.
did. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've been really on the rails, and floating along like yeah. Has things come up? Of course, things have come up. It's life, right? Things always come up. Are they conspiring against me? I don't know. It's like, I
So
feel like it.
I love that analogy of the rails. I think you should give it again. And I'm just gonna premise that my experience of the rails this week was a lot of like
I get you. I get
on
you.
the curves. I was like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
hitting all the curves.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to get? I could. I sure.
Yeah, just share it again because
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful analogy and it may have gotten lost in a wonderful conversation that we had with Dominic.
Yes. Yes. That
But
was
it's a good,
wonderful. Wonderful.
yeah,
Yeah. And lots of people joined us and watched the recordings afterwards. So if you're just hearing this for the first time, just go back to our last week's episode and have a listen. There was a lot of for me there was a lot of insight and aha moments from Dominic. It was a wonderful conversation and light
A lot of aha moments, and maybe we can do it, like, I wonder if we should do an episode where we kind of like reflect on what's been talked about.
Oh, like the
We should
best
do that.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I had a lot of revelations, but I also perhaps places where I feel like, not that I feel I have a different point of view, but where I feel like I can see how certain things can be challenged
Mm,
or misinterpreted or
hmm
misunderstood,
hmm
right?
hmm
And
hmm
so I always feel the need to just really go back and kind of take it apart for people so that they truly understand, because I
Yeah.
think in self-development sometimes there are many misunderstandings, right, and many conflicting, seemingly conflicting messages, and it's more about the way people are like receiving it or interpreting it than the actual message being contradictory, if that makes any sense.
And yeah, and people need to get clarity, right? Because
People
if
need to get clarity, and
yeah,
it is confusing, so I want to make sure that I say that sometimes it does get confusing even for me, and then I really sit with it and I think about it, and then I really realize the thought behind the thought, if that makes
oh yeah,
any sense.
oh yeah,
And so I think it would be good to kind of deconstruct the conversation from last week, because it's a, it's a big one, manifestation and thoughts becoming things. That's really at the base of everything that we always talk about.
yeah,
And the way he was expressing it and putting it out there is a little different than the way we talk about it, right?
yeah,
Because we each just express things through our own understanding of it, our own experience of it, right? Our own way of filtering it through,
yep,
right? Which may or may not resonate, right?
yep,
So I always want to make sure that our audience understands things, in the way that we are able to
yeah.
portray it, and, help them kind of like pull it apart.
Well,
Anyway,
yeah,
side note.
and that's the importance of questions, right? Is that if you have a gap in understanding, you
Hmm.
should always like I always go back to Stephen Covey's in the Seven Habits. Seek first to understand. Like seek
Uh-huh.
that understanding. Be curious about. Okay, well, I'm not quite getting it. Okay, well, let's explore that part, right? Because that's
Hmm.
if in the absence of information, we love to make up shit and fill in
Uh-huh.
the gaps.
Yeah, we always fill in the gaps
Yeah,
since
exactly. Because
we're born.
we want that
Yeah.
gap filled, right?
To the level of our understanding that moment, which,
Yes.
as a parent is such an important thing to grasp,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
To the level of understanding of our children in that moment,
Yeah.
and how often like thoughts are like so much simpler. The way they interpret things, it always comes back to them, because the world is very simple. It's
Oh,
them, the people that they love, and nothing else matters, right? So
yeah.
yeah,
Sure. So,
yeah.
thanks, Adina, for joining us, and Jan, good to see you.
Hello, welcome everyone.
Yes, and
So
we were just talking about our week. So,
let's get into it.
well,
I'm feeling fiery.
well, yes, yes, yes. Well, Fati, you asked me about my analogy, and
Yeah,
I'd love
yeah.
to. I've repeated it several times in different other workshops, but it's becoming a lot more clear as I live the experience of what I'm terminating or talking about riding the rails, and and it's like uh, a railroad track. If you just envision what a railroad track is, and it's a set parameter, right? But what makes it work is they're called trucks, where the wheels of the train, the car that sits on, are called trucks, and the wheels themselves are enlarged. They don't fit perfectly on the rails. They're actually quite wider than the rails. But what keeps them on track are the flanges. And to keep it in the tracks, it has to hit these flanges. So it's constantly going back and forth, adjusting itself naturally to, hi Angela, um, the to the rhythm of the rails, sort of, if you want to call it that. So when it hits the side of the rails, there's friction, and sparks and all sorts of other different things. If it's the first time you've ever been on a train and you're experiencing this kind of rockin' hitting friction thing, you would naturally think that there might be something wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and want to do something about it or have some fear about it. And if you felt like, because of this rub and friction that's happening, I need to do something right in this moment, and you find that either you can't, or when you try to, it seems to become worse, there's a fear that you might derail.
Mm-hmm.
But when you truly understand the nature of what the system was designed for, it's designed that it hits the side of the rails. It's designed to provide a little friction, which tells the car, okay, you need to readjust, or you're going around a curve. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't, if we don't add any more meaning to the friction, when we let go of trying to control the train so it's always in the middle, we can relax and let the design of the system do what it's supposed to do. And I can sit back when I notice the friction, and this is part of my work, is when I notice the friction, I just know, oh, that's just the design of the system. That's just it letting me know there's something up, right? Do I need to do anything about it? No. I can relax and I can enjoy the ride. So rather than focusing on the friction, I can now focus on the journey. I can focus on what's going by. I can look at the different scenery. And at some point, if it occurs to me that I should get off at this particular station, I get off at this station. I get off at this station because I want to get off at the station, not that I need to get off, but I want to. I want to, you know, whatever. So for me, it's always been, when you understand the metaphor and understand how the mind works, you understand that life is about touching the rails, right?
And sometimes hitting the curves.
And hitting the curves
Those
and
long curves that just go on for a
oh,
while, right? It's just, you feel a little out of balance for a while, right? That was
so
my morning.
yeah. So that kind of brings us up to what we were kind of talking about, because we often point to in our conversations about this thing called the work. Like, what is the work? And anytime somebody mentions work, it's like we're talking like hard stuff or work or sweating and grinding
It
and
is hard stuff.
well,
What are you talking about?
it can be,
It
right.
can be. Yeah, it
Right, it
can
can
be.
it can be
Mhm.
anything. It could be a fun experience. It could be, riding the rails in the sense of,
Well,
right.
what I like to, the analogy that I like to make on
Yeah,
this is, it's not this like sweating and like, it's the same thing for your mind though. Your mind is sweating, is putting in the reps, and your mind is enjoying the bicycle ride or feeling a little fatigued, right? So it's a gym for your mind, pretty much, right? For your emotions, the inner work, everything that comes from the inside and manifests on the outside of ourselves, right? So our emotions, our feelings, are like just how we're experiencing life on the inside and in our mind, and the way our mind makes meaning of things and uh, creates distress or a feeling of fulfillment or happiness, right? Like it's all in here, right? And so it's very much, the work is very much about working out the inner part of ourselves, the way
and
I
that's
see it. Yeah.
and that's a really big distinction, because at one level of understanding, and I was there too, was I looked at my outside circumstances that they needed to be worked on. I needed to adjust how my environment was to somehow make me feel better, not realizing that it had nothing to do with the environment. It had everything to do with my thinking
Hmm.
about that environment. So as that level changed, the environment naturally changed. It was sort of like, it's like, wow, like when did that happen? And it was like, it's always been there. Kind of
Well,
you have a new set of
it's
eyes.
always been responding to
Yes,
you. It's always been
absolutely.
reflecting back, right?
Yeah,
So what is it reflecting back, right?
yeah,
It's reflecting back what's coming from the inside. And if you don't like what you see on the outside, then the way to go fix it is to go fix what's inside, what you believe about yourself and the world, and like in what your experience of life is depends very much on what you believe about yourself, pretty much, right?
pretty much. You're the
Pretty
conditioned self,
much.
the conditioned
Yeah, the
self, right?
conditioned self, right? So if you believe it, you're right. You
Yep,
are it. If you
yep,
don't believe it, you're right as well. You're not it, right? Like whatever you believe is what is. And I know that is, and this is such a difficult um, shift to make, right? Frankly, to go from victim to owning it, right? And
yep,
I know we debated whether or not the word taking responsibility was appropriate or it felt a little bit blamey. So let's say we'll take ownership and control,
yes,
right?
yeah,
So going from I can't do anything about it because I'm the victim, it's being done to me, to oh no, I'm gonna own my own and I'm going to take control because it's my own,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And what I can do about the situation or what I don't like and how can I change it, right? So going from it's done to me to I'm going to own what I don't like and change it,
yeah.
right? And it's not an easy mindset shift to make. And even when you do make it, just listen carefully, you still fall for it.
At
You still
occasion,
fall
yeah,
for it
absolutely,
occasionally.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah. And because
occasionally.
part of that is part of the design, right? Part of the design is survival. So
Of course. Yeah.
my understanding of the ego is its its mechanism works on automatic. So one of the things it doesn't trust in us is being able to look at what's happening in front of us and make quick decisions. So what we see in front of us, if it's a saber-toothed tiger, it's like danger, we need to run, we need to do something about it. The problem with that part of our brain is it doesn't see reality as clearly uh, as what it's making up. So it's either going to be operating from memory or it's going to be looking through reality. So there's always this check and balance that we have an opportunity to look at from a point of view, like Byron Katie says in her the work, and doing the work is asking ourselves the truth. Is this the truth or not
Hmm.
the truth? Am I seeing it for what it actually is, or is this just part of my story or part of my makeup, or projecting?
Which, by the way, it always is. I'm going to interrupt us for 1 second and I'm going to do something that's going to give us much more clarity. Sorry, everyone. My
Were you having
children,
blemishes?
I forgot to do this. My children love to put their fingers on the camera. And do you see how much clearer it is now, the
Oh,
point of view?
maybe I should.
I was like, why am I looking all hazy? Oh, yeah, I see some big fingerprints there. Anyway,
Well,
some grease too.
but that see, but that's a perfect. I love that analogy. I always love that analogy because I use this, right?
Hmm.
Because when part of recognizing. So first of all, I have three parts. The first part is you need to be aware of that you want to change. Like there's something there that says to you, you know what? I want something different. I want you're aware of a need for a change. The
Hmm.
second part, and we've talked about this in private and other areas, is the desire to, like, to actually desire to
The
participate
motivation and the desire,
in the
yes.
work, to participate in the
Yeah.
work, right? and then it's through insight, through conversations, and through your own life experience, you have insight, which gains your knowledge and level of understanding increases. Then you start to see the what the work actually does. But it's really about bringing clarity, right? Because you have this conditioned self that has a very, very narrow point of view, and it doesn't give you the breadth of possibility and enough clarity to really truly see a situation the way it really is. It feels very real that that's the way it is. That's part of the illusion. That's part of the
And it feels very real. And I want to say, because I think this is where people really, really get triggered,
Mhm.
it is real
Oh,
because it is real to you, right?
it's real
And
to
it
you.
is valid.
Yes.
And it is a voice that comes from a very deep, deep, deep place called our inner child, right? That's where it all comes from.
Hmm.
So it is very real to her, to him, right? And it's not to be dismissed, and it's
No.
not to be bypassed, and it's not to be like ignored, right? Because I will tell you in a minute what happens when you do, because I did that. I still fall for this too, right? I understand all of this, like we were just talking about. Sometimes you do fall back into victim, and you don't really actually realize it until you do. You're like, oh my God, I'm back in it. I got sucked in again,
Just that
right?
quick. Just that
That
quick.
quick. The
Yeah.
difference though is you get out of it that much
Quicker.
quicker. You
That's
know what to do to get out of it. So the other important thing is to not feel bad because you're there. To be very understanding, to always look back at that little girl, that little boy that needed to just come out and just feel heard and just cry and just play the role that it has always played, right? It just wants to be seen, and sometimes it's going to come out. And so instead of being resentful or like upset up, and like starting to kind of really feed the analytical mind that's going to tell you, oh, see, this stuff doesn't work because you're falling into this again, just really understand that no, this is your opportunity to be compassionate towards yourself, to understand that being human, there's nothing that says that we must be perfect. Being human is about having all
it's
these faults and falling and touching and hitting the rails and staying in it sometimes, right?
well
Not realizing it, right?
the quote that from I forget which book he wrote. He talked about it in one of his lectures, but Sid Banks said, "Life is a contact sport." And when I
Mm-hmm.
heard that, immediately you think of you need your knocks and hits and all that other kind of stuff. But I started to realize, particularly playing with this analogy of the rails, is that you need that contact, or else you don't know where you are.
It's
Right?
it's the way it's meant to work. Again, nothing says that
It,
life should just be like a breeze, because that's kind of boring, frankly.
well,
People that people that seemingly have that, they have other things that they're dealing with on the
yeah,
inside. I
yeah.
can assure you
Oh
that.
yeah,
No
nobody. Yeah.
one has like a life that's like a straight line where everything is perfect, right? There's always, because we're not here to just live in perfection. We're
Well,
here to learn,
why
right?
do why do you why do people go to these amusement parks?
To feel what it really is like.
They go for that in the now experience, right? The
Yeah.
fear, the like, and knowing like they understand. Oh, it's all make believe, and it's all kind of like the jungle ride. I don't really have any control over the boat or anything. And but it's interesting. They come through it going, oh my God, what a ride! Wasn't that great? Let's just do it again, right? Like,
It's a
wouldn't it?
contrast, right?
It's
Because
a but it's you're in full contact.
yeah, you're in full contact.
Full
And
contact.
also, if life was always a straight line, how would you know when it sucks?
Well,
You wouldn't have that context,
and it would
right?
be boring. It would be boring.
Yeah,
It would be
yeah.
the teacup ride, or not the tecup ride, whatever that, the it's we. we actually seem to thrive more when we're participating fully in life. So,
Yeah.
so for me, part of the work, and if you're going to get an idea that there isn't a script, but part of the work is noticing when I'm not participating and get
Hmm.
myself back into the game, right? And understand again, uh, getting back into, oh yeah, it's just the rubs, it's just the friction, it's just, it has nothing to do with reality or my victim, my playing the victim. It's just part of life, and I can enjoy the ride a little bit more, right? And at the end of the day, if I can come out of this going, holy moly, what a ride that was, you know and because really all we have is the dash, right?
For sure. And at the same time, there's going to be moments where it's not going to be just a nudge,
It's gonna no,
right?
that's
It's
right.
not going to be just a nudge, and it's going
There'll
to
be
be like
earthquake.
hitting those rails hard, and it's going to feel super uncomfortable and
Yeah,
upsetting. Tragedies do happen in life, right?
yeah,
Difficult situations are real,
yeah.
right? We're not saying that they're not. And I think that when we do hit those really rough curves, that is where actually we need to put a little bit more weight, to counter that and do the work in a more powerful way in redirecting our thinking. And really, truthfully, all that we need to do beyond what we would normally do is let those feelings express, because
Express.
we're going to have feelings about it. We're going to get upset. We're going to be triggered. The inner child is always going to get triggered, right? And we're going to just have moments where we're not at our best. We're going to have moments where it's going to feel like doom and gloom and dark and like nothing is working out. I was just in it. So it's very fresh. Like I said, my life always prepares me for these conversations.
Hmm.
And when you're in it, it's very, very real. It's very real. It
Yeah,
feels real. You believe it. You're feeling it. You're feeling the sadness in all over your body. You're feeling the anger, whatever the feeling
yeah,
is.
ever, yeah,
And guess what? The only way to change that, there's two options you have. You keep sitting in it and you just feed it and you keep getting, guess what? Like Dominic was saying last week, don't worry, it's gonna get worse. I love that. It is gonna get worse, right? So that's one option. You're just gonna stay in it, it's gonna get worse.
yeah,
Stay in it and it's gonna get worse. Or you're gonna let it express, just surrender to it. Let the tears come out, let the anger come out, remove all judgment, just let it express. I would like to share how I do that. There's
yeah,
many different ways that you can do that. Obviously, the ways that it's going to come out if you don't do that is you go snap at the person that crosses the street, or the guy that just is not going fast enough in the car, or the person that like happens to be at the wrong place in the wrong time and you're
yeah.
just snappy and
And you got
angry, right? Yeah, so it's either going to come out like that, or you can do this in the safety and privacy of your home. Sit down and cry, record yourself while you scream, put two chairs in front of you and have the conversation that you want to have out loud. You cannot keep things just in here, because thoughts just kind of blend together in our heads. But when we express them through language and we hear it back, and now we're kind of hearing what's being said from it, we're getting a little bit of an observer's view when we hear ourselves, right?
that.
And now we're processing things differently.
Yeah.
And even more, if you want to take it a step further, which I always do because I love to be hardcore with this.
Let's not
I
go
think,
to this step. Let's go to this one.
oh yeah, let's go to this and just like really push beyond the bounds of your own limits, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I record myself. Do I want to be recorded in that moment? Not necessarily. Let me tell you, not fun, not something that I resisted for a minute or two. And then I'm like, okay, just do it. You can always just delete it. And I always do, by the way, after a while, I delete it. I may watch it once or twice. Um, but you record it. And the reason why I'm saying record yourself is because what is really powerful about that is the ability to watch it back. because now you're truly in the observer's seat. And
Mm.
now you're hearing things and seeing things and noticing things in a way that you wouldn't when you're in it, when you're expressing it, when you're feeling it, certainly not when you're just keeping it all to yourself and feeling feelings of shame and anger towards yourself and why am I express it. I feel ashamed that I'm having a crappy day today. And I didn't want to use the S word, but that's really what was coming to mind first, right? Um, just say it. I feel like a fraud today. I feel, whatever it is that you're feeling, I feel like a cheater, whatever it is that you're feeling. No one has to hear it. It's between you, yourself, and you.
Yeah.
Just do it and, give it a try. That's a really good way to really go full on that next level of expression. You can, again, and I think we have talked about this before, like emotional release, like punching pillows, physical exercise, going for a run, nature walk, meditation. But any of those tools, they work differently per person, right? Depending on who you are and what works for you. And also depending on what's triggering. Are you sad? Are you mad? Are you anxious? Are you, upset? Are you resentful? Then based on that, the expression of those feelings may vary, right? If
Hmm.
you're really sad, or like you're feeling like critical of yourself, it may be very different if you're very angry towards someone or something, right? You may not want to go punch a pillow that day, but if you're very angry at something or someone, that may be a good activity to do. Again, no one has to see it. And I see Rick just raising his eyebrows.
No, 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 no. You know what?
Envisioning that.
From my coaching point of view, I guess you have to find you in
Yeah,
in the work,
yeah.
right? You have to find you in the work, and there are many paths on the journey that get you kind of in where you are. Some people
Mhm.
really like meditation, some people like this. You get a huge amount of value out of that which it really reminds me of, anytime you've had a really quite an extensive experience of something, an intense experience, and because of it you want to share it with somebody. The minute that you try and describe what just happened to you, what do you experience, right? It's
It
sort of
just, yeah, it goes
like,
down.
oh,
Yeah.
it's not quite the same. It's just you got to be there, right? That's exactly what it is. You have to be there,
You're
right?
expressing it. Yes.
Because now all you can do, best you can do, is provide some detail, right? And some kind of evocation of emotion through your speaking. You go to the doctor. You've been having this pain all this time. You finally go to the doctor, and the doctor says, "What's wrong with you?" Well, I had this pain. It's like, but when I'm there, when you're in that moment, it's sort of like, well, where did it go? So for me, it's always pointing towards the fact that 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 thought is transient. When we learn, whatever way you want to learn, to release it, it wants to
Yeah.
be expressed. It wants to be, and the more, it's like for me, it's like the ships, right? The ships will always be floating by, and every once in a while, something's going to catch my attention, and to the point where it comes closer, and then I have an inspection, and then I want to analyze it, and then I want to do something about it, and all this other stuff. Well, that's happening. The rest of the world's going by me.
Yeah.
And,
And yeah, no, it's very, very true. It's like it's such a individual experience, right?
yes,
So you're so right. It's you have to choose what works for you. And by the way,
experiment.
I don't record
No,
myself every time I'm upset. I
no,
I do it when I'm really, really upset, which I clearly
I'd be
was
running out of
today.
memory.
Yeah, well, you can erase it.
Oh yeah.
But I use all of them actually. Actually, one that I haven't mentioned is release writing, like
Mm.
writing things down.
Journaling.
So
Yeah.
let's say you receive an email that's really triggering to you and you type your response and you're really angry, you really want to hit send, just save it. save it to draft, give it a minute, type it again, go fix it in your drafts. If you don't trust yourself, put it in your notes and then copy and paste later. Every time I do this, inevitably, sometimes I have to wait. It's just that one time, and then I can write the email that's like gonna get my point across without all of the noise, right? Sometimes I have to wait a couple of days, depending on what it is, right? But inevitably, the email or the message I end up sending back is strikingly different than the
Mhm.
first one I had typed, right? But the reason for that is that while you write your angry response, you're releasing. That's
Yeah,
release writing. It's
yeah.
like just let it all out, no filter. Don't think about the best way to say it, just say it as is, right? If writing is your way of communication, that's a really good way to do it. And it's the same thing for when you speak to a chair, like speak it out loud, just no filters.
And I would suggest that you actually put a box or something that hides the send key. So that,
Trust me, I learned that the hard way.
oh, me too. Me too. Yeah, I think
I just go to my notes now. I don't do the reply. I go
that's
to my
great.
notes. Sometimes I remove the sender.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but
that's going through a divorce for you people.
yeah, but it's a but all those are part of it, right? So it's really
Yeah.
about, part of the work is in the act of noticing, right? Being that
Mhm.
observer, knowing when you're in the muck, knowing when you don't have clarity, right? So it and then it's like, okay, like it's out for me. It's a little like a simple stop, drop, and roll. And I've used this as a fire where if you cut yourself on fire, you stop, drop, roll out, put the flames out. But I've noticed this and I've practiced this, and it's a practice, right? This is a practice, just like any skill. Like when I go for my walks, I consciously notice where my thoughts are going. Am I thoughts on the trail? Am I listening to what's happening, the birds, the trees? Am I seeing the colors of the flowers? Right. And then all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh, geez, I got an appointment at Tuesday. I wonder if I'm going to be able to make it. By the way, it's Sunday. Right. Again, that's part of noticing, oh, I'm not being present, because the more present you are, the more clarity you have. And part of being present is exactly what you're pointing to, is when you release that, the act of doing that is a very present moment activity.
Well, and it's also the only way you're actually going to be able to do the work. Let's just get into that because this is part of doing the work is the release, right? Because for as long as you're triggered, for as long as you're reactive, you're not seeing clearly. And if you record yourself only once, even when you're not very angry, you'll know what I'm talking about. You're not seeing clearly. You're not going to be able to resolve anything, come up with any solutions or feel empowered,
No,
right? Or do the work. You're not going to be able to do anything because we're engaged in the fight or flight system. Exactly.
you're
That's
shaking
all
your
you're
snow
seeing.
globe. That's all you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So why we really stress the releasing the emotions and the expressing them is because that is your gateway to doing the work, to actually doing the work that is going to. I'm gonna have that. I felt like it was gonna hit my forehead.
Sorry.
It's okay. I needed to see that today. But yeah, it's like unless you do this part of it, you're not going to be able to get to the actual work that's going to be useful and help you grow and get out and see the learning. You're not going to see any of that. You're going to be like, fuck that, right?
Yep.
I am angry. This is not happening, right? So, and I'm telling you, what if you're the type of person that tends to shove it under the rug, put it away, and I'm not that type of person, but I did that recently, I admit it, and that's why I had my awakening today. You put it away because you just don't have time for it. Guess what? It's going to get worse. The knock is going to get harder and harder and harder and harder until you cannot. It will affect your entire day. It will affect your mood. It will come out of every pore, right? So the expressing part is basically the premise to the work, right? To now knowing, well, where do I need to go look, and what do I need to do about this? Where
Yeah.
do I need to like understand this or see this in a different way,
Yeah.
right? What can I do about it, right? So
It's almost like I've been pointing in this direction for such a long time, and it's like, okay, I need to kind of
look
turn.
this way.
I need to.
You cannot turn that way until you have the ability
Oh,
to admit
you
that,
have you
right? To
have to
see
release
it.
this side.
Yeah,
You have to release
yeah,
that, right? There's almost
yeah,
like the death of the caterpillar before it becomes a butterfly, right? It's sort of
yeah.
it has to happen. Like and like the laws of physics, no two thoughts, no two ideas, no two emotions can occupy the same space until one is released, right?
Yeah, you cannot be happy and sad at the same time,
Pretty
although you
hard,
may do
pretty hard.
alternate between them at
You
times.
could, but not at the same time. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's so part, and that's the for me that's always been the biggest part. Like if any is that deeper understanding of the mechanism of how the system is actually working helps me understand the and enables me to sort of release earlier, right? Because I know that's where it is, because I know I'm caught in overthinking. I'm overdoing something that's causing it, right? It's that's providing the less clarity. So part of the biggest step, and where I see the biggest transformation in clients, is that initial noticing of how it's all kind of working and how it's unfolding, and what we do after that can go in another various ways. But I don't know what your experience about that is, but I think that seems to be the biggest fundamental step in the beginning of any transformation.
Yeah, I would say that you and I are fundamentally very much the same and very much different in certain aspects, right? Like I think we have different temperaments, right? So sometimes I feel like the noticing is not necessarily that obvious, right? And
Oh,
that again is because fight or flight is very loud. So reactiveness, if you're someone who had, trauma in your life, you had a certain type of childhood where you always had to like protect yourself, or if you're in it now, it doesn't just have to be in your childhood. It could be a situation that triggers that, like wanting to defend yourself or like protect yourself, right? If you're in that fight or flight, sometimes just saying, let me just notice, you're not noticing anything. Let me tell you, you're going to start noticing the moment that you release what's causing the reactiveness, right? So
mhm.
often is a fear, right? Let it express, let it out, and then now you can notice. Now I can actually notice I'm in it, right? The moment you start releasing, and it doesn't have to be a full release, you're like, yeah, I'm in it. Those alarm bells, it wasn't just telling me to go fight for my life. It was just telling me I got stuff that I need to release, right?
Yeah, yeah,
9 times out of 10, that's what
yeah,
it is. Unless
yeah.
you're getting hit by a truck, that's what it is, right?
Totally, totally, and that,
So yeah, so that it's in that moment where you find where like the bubbles have come out, the pressure is off a little bit, then now you can notice. Now you can be calmer in your mind and actually, not you feel acknowledged. You have acknowledged yourself in the validity of your feelings, right? And now you can think about the situation, right? And notice and go into. But some people are gifted to have, they have the gift of having a very like, like a milder temperament. I don't know how else to put it.
yeah, no,
And just go there, right? We're all different. But if you're like me, that you react and you're like fiery, and you're just like you need a little more time to settle down, then don't worry, you will notice the moment that you slow down
well, and I
to the speed of Rick.
To the speed of
the,
Rick.
the moment that you slow down to the speed of Rick, then you start noticing. I love that. That's going to be a new tagline: slow down to the speed of Rick.
But I think we get caught up in language a little bit too sometimes, and when I'm referring to the initial, like I'm talking about the levels of consciousness. So
Hmm.
when I'm consciously aware that I'm in, because there's a lot of times I'll be in the victim mode, right? I'll be going into, oh, this has to, it's so it's when I'm consciously catch myself, right? So the only way I can catch myself is to notice, it's just another word, become aware of that I am at one level. I'm at
Hmm.
that level. The minute, my experience, the minute I notice that I'm caught up, that's when my consciousness level changes, right? So
Hmm.
so I immediately, in using the acronym, the stop, drop, and roll, I stop what I'm doing because something has made me aware of. I've hit the side of the rail, and now I drop. I drop whatever was holding me there. I release it. I release and let it go. And now I can see more clearly, okay, what might be the next step? What should I be doing? And it could be I need to go for a walk. I need to write this out. I need to, and not send it. I need whatever occurs to you in that moment, because I have a bit of clarity now. Before, I'm stuck at the ceiling, and when I become consciously aware of I'm there, then, like what you're pointing to is, yes, you start to notice the clarity. You start to notice some things differently. That's changed. There's something changing, and at that moment, that's when you can start doing some more of whatever we want to call the work kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say for me is like both of those experiences,
Yeah.
right? Depending on the level of, what I'm going through, how much I'm triggered, or,
Yeah.
like the level of fight or flight response, let's
Yeah.
call it, right? In some people that's stronger than others, right?
Yeah.
And that's when, like Joe Dispenza would say, that's when the body becomes the mind, right? Takes control of you, right? And I do notice that I know when I'm in it, because obviously I have a lot of awareness around this, doing this work. I know that I'm in it, but in that moment, what my analytical mind is telling me is prevailing, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I can slightly separate myself from it, but I'm still in it. The body is still the mind,
Yeah.
right? And for me, yes, it's not as simple to just notice and it drops down. Yeah, it drops down that I realize, I see what you're saying. It drops down because I realize that I'm in it, right? I realize that I'm in it, but it's sometimes it's still so strong that I
Oh.
really need to
Oh.
like,
It's
it's not it's not going to be like I'm in it, I'm going to go for a walk. No, I'm typing, I'm reacting, right? I'm in
sure.
it and I'm
Yeah.
still doing this,
Yeah.
like, f this, f that. I'm not doing this, not today. Today I'm going to react, and today I'm going to be angry, and today they're going to hear from me, like 100%. There are moments I'm just like,
Yeah.
all of this work is just a
Screw it.
bunch of bull, right? And then and I know that it's just my mind tricking me into it, but it feels so good to say it in that moment and to feel that way. It's that addiction that Dispenza speaks to so well, right? Like we're addicted to our habitual being, right?
Oh, totally.
Breaking the habit of yourself. What
Yeah.
an amazing name, right?
Yeah.
It is breaking the habit of being yourself, the addiction to what we know, the addiction to all the things that keep us in the bounds and the limits
The
that we
limits.
have
Yeah.
set for ourselves, right? Where we're addicted to feeling like our habitual selves,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and it shows up, and sometimes it just feels a little, it feels so good to take that. It's kind of like the person that smokes and just wants that little drag, and it's like,
Mm,
okay, I'm gonna let myself have it, be in this for a minute, misbehave,
yeah.
and then it doesn't serve you. And
No.
then, because it always going to give you the same results you've always gotten. And, it doesn't work. You go there for a minute, you get hit in the face, and you come back.
Yeah. Yeah. And and continuing from that point is the other layers. It's the other peeling back of, and part of what I call the practice of, right? So when you're in it, you know that, you recognize it, and then it's a release. You're in it, and it's a release, and it's a,
Mhm.
it's a constant up and down, like, and as you get more comfortable with that, then you start to find that there's a lot of sweet spots in the journey. There's a lot more
Mhm.
comfortableness in the journey. And it doesn't mean that any of that's going away, because life is a contact sport. So it's not
Yeah.
going to, but you can finesse it a lot better. Like when the traffic is going a lot slower than you want it to, you can sort of go, okay, I can release that one.
What can I listen to?
What can I
What's going
listen
to keep me
to?
entertained,
Or,
right?
oh wow, I didn't notice that building there. Like, when did they build that? Kind of a thing.
Well, that's real bad traffic if you can notice the building.
Well, I was on a walk one day with a client, and sometimes I like to do little walks, and I'm going, when did they put this statue here? And he says, it's been there for about, I don't know, 5 years. It goes like, but when you're in your head, you're not in your life. You're either
Mhm.
in your head or in your life.
Well,
When you're
yeah.
in your life, you start to notice more. That's all.
Well, I would argue with you that we're always in our life because our
Okay,
life is our experience
is
of it.
that
We're
is
not in this, like solid three-dimensional,
I
right?
agree. I agree with you. I
Right.
agree. Yeah.
But yeah, I really love what you pointed to right now in terms of, like, so let's take me, the one extreme, and let's take Rick, the more evolved, right? And I'm not saying that that's what it is. I'm not saying that in any way that
No,
that's what it is.
no.
I just want to make, create an example out of it. Let's say that you're always reacting, that's what you always do, which by the way, it's not what I always do. Okay.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear.
Yes. I just have, I just had a rough, really rough patch, and there's reasons for it. But let's say that you're someone who is always reacting. And by the way, in my previous life, I was always reacting, right? So the old me, right? And then now you're at the place where Rick is, right? Where he can just sit back, let it drop, and get up and go for that walk, right? Going from me to him is going to get easier and easier and easier as you do this, right? So the old me would get triggered. Let's say I would get triggered 100 times a day. I slowly walked my way to maybe I get triggered once every few months, the way I did today,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's a big, 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 big step, right? But it didn't happen overnight. And it only was possible because of continuing to do this work, continuing to notice, continuing,
Exploring the
yeah,
inside out. Yeah.
remaining curious,
Yeah.
right? Like releasing it, doing the work, releasing it, and then with a curious mind, just going in and looking at where we need to look at, where do we need to, what do we need to work on, and asking more powerful questions than just why me? Why does this stuff always happen to me? Why is the world all against me? Right?
Exactly. The
That's
universe is
not
ganging up.
empowering.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes it does feel like it's ganging up. It does, and I felt that way. I'm gonna say it flat out. I felt that way, right? And it's like, you know what? I may just not be that important
What? What?
to, to this greater intelligence just be like so focused on me.
Out
I'm
of
just
all the
saying.
7 billion people in this world,
Well, people and all the other beings, and like,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
um yeah, it's like maybe he, she, the energy, the universe, whatever it is not just all against me. It does feel like it sometimes though, right? And that's
absolutely,
okay, and that's okay,
absolutely,
and it's okay to get mad at it, and it's okay to feel that you're the the center of the universe. That's
absolutely.
fine.
That's right. Yeah, and that's part of that whole deal. Like I love anybody that's ever read, or you can actually look her up too. But Byron Katie does a lot of what she I think her podcast is called The Work too. But it really is, when you get down to the clarity level, it's really about understanding, you know, who you really are, how it works, and then asking powerful questions. And one of the powerful questions I like to ask is it true? Is it true? And if it's not true, then what? Right? So if I'm moving forward on something, and there's something getting in the way, it's like, well, whatever it is, I'm not good enough, or I don't think I have the skills. Like, is it really true? And you have an opportunity to explore something different, right? Something that what, I used to always just stop right there. Well, what would happen if you didn't stop right there? What would happen if you took the next step? I guarantee you your head won't explode, but it's that's part of doing the work, is exploring for yourself the what if I actually took that next step. What would happen? Like,
What
what
if
if I
I owned this? What
yes,
if I owned it? What if
yeah,
I owned my part, even if I cannot see?
yeah,
What could possibly be my part in this?
absolutely,
Because guess what? It's not just about owning it and feeling that you're blaming yourself. It's not about blaming yourself. It's the
no,
more you own, the more you control. By the way. Ooh,
it's okay.
okay.
It's just a test.
It's just a test. Okay. Testing us.
Well, it's
um,
we have this early warning device thing. Wouldn't that be
Uh,
interesting?
I have it too. Yeah, it
Yeah,
has happened to me too. Actually, recently when there was that shooting in the subway, my phone started going
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's
But
scared of
but
even how
there's a
I.
good analogy, because we have a built-in defense mechanism like that. We have and
Mhm.
that's part of the why the rails are there, right? It's like an early warning detection system that says, "Hey, wait a minute, you know, like, pay attention, just pay attention," right?
Mhm.
So it just yeah, I got a funny story. I know we're running out of time, but I watched a video of a
But
friend
what
of
is
mine that,
time, Rick?
yeah, with this time. Okay, okay, that's another episode. The he's in uh Tahiti. No, I'm mispronouncing it. I want to say, anyways, he's out in the South Pacific there, and they have crosswalks, and everything's kind of in French. And when you listen to this crosswalk, it tells you, it says, "Oh shit, don't go."
I love
And I'm thinking, wouldn't we have
it.
something similar in there that sort of says, "Oh shit, don't do that," kind of a thing.
It's so true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
It's in the form of discomfort in your body, in your
yes,
emotions.
yes,
You get it always is either it's always nudging you one
yeah,
way or another. It's always like warning you of something, and
yeah,
sometimes, and most times, the warning that you see is in the terms of like, I need to keep myself safe, like fight or flight. Like you engage the fight or flight, when really the message is a lot gentler than that.
yeah,
It's just that we're reacting to it.
yeah,
We're just like protecting ourselves and our lives, right? But like part of really doing the work is to consistently like bringing yourself back to this, and like remaining curious and really like doing this inner work of putting yourself out on the table, emptying your bag, and really looking at all these different pieces. How do they fit together? And you know what? And I know that sometimes we talk about this, it sounds really easy because obviously this is what we do. But if you cannot do it yourself, there are many great programs out there that guide you through doing the work and what that looks
Yeah.
like, right?
Yeah.
Like self reflection and like journaling and sitting in meditation,
All those different
taking
things.
care of yourself and
Yeah. Eating
self
healthy.
care,
Yeah.
exercise. It's all part of doing the work.
Yeah.
Doing the work is really like a big, big, big. I feel like we just like touched the tip of the iceberg here by really kind of talking about where does the work start and how can the work start, right? But all of those things are part of doing the work.
And,
It's
and
not
and
just
that's the
one
biggest
thing.
piece. That's the
but
biggest
but
piece.
what I would say, the point I wanted to
Yeah.
make is that if you feel that you cannot do it on your own, I encourage you to seek out a coach that can guide you through this. And don't think that you're stuck with a coach for the rest of your life, because I think sometimes people really kind of associate coaching with therapy, and some of us have been in therapy for a really long time and you don't feel like you want to commit to that financially. It is not the same thing at all, right? it's
No.
it's meant to kind of get you on the way to do it on your own, to stand on your
Absolutely.
own feet, to
You.
be able to do this work on your own. But once you get that guidance and you get it and you understand what it's like, then
It's up to you.
the
It's your
goal,
practice.
yeah, is to
It's your
train you
practice.
to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, to do it
Yeah.
for yourself.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that because I think it's such an important distinction and to just make and to help people understand how different coaching is from
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah. You hire us to fire us because
Exactly.
if I,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, if you're
If
hanging
you're
around,
with me for 10 years, then I'm
yeah,
not a very good coach.
no, no, we could have a really good friendship, but yeah, no, it's that's not part of it, and that's the part that I, and we're kind of over time, and I apologize. I do have an appointment that I wanted to get to, but the is is that you know even though we have touched the surface, it's pointing you in the direction you need to look. Right? It's not
Yes.
it's not an outside; it's an inside. And in some ways, it is a bit of a spiritual journey because in the essence of spirit, it's really we don't see it. We don't see it like we do
Well,
see it.
and it's an inner work, so it's individual to you. So I cannot tell you what the work looks like for you.
Yeah,
That is something that you discover on your own or with the help of a coach. It is unique to you because you're a unique person.
absolutely.
Because also doing the work looks very different from person to person based on their needs, their
Better.
experiences, what
Yeah,
they need to work on.
yeah,
So you can't really say, well, doing the work is this, and this, but I can tell you, you're not going to do the work if you're triggered and reactive,
yeah. No, no, and that's
right?
part of the when you think when you're reflecting that it's an outside in world, when you start the biggest shift is noticing that it's an inside out world
Yeah.
because we can't see that. It's like for me the analogy of wind. Like we can't see the wind, but we see the effects of the wind. We
Hmm.
see the trees
I love
moving.
that. Yeah.
We can feel it against our skin, but we don't actually see it. So
Hmm.
part of what we're pointing to is stuff you really don't see, but you definitely see the effects of because
Yes.
it's reflected in
Yes.
your outside world. So
And the moment that you start seeing things
nice
that
to
way,
see you too, Teresa. Thanks for joining us.
you're going from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Yeah.
And the moment that you've done that, that's where you have really started the true, real work. The moment that you start looking within, you do have that growth mindset created.
These
Yes.
these little boxes
Yes.
here start to disappear.
They start to get wider, and
Yeah.
your box gets wider and
The
larger
tolerance
and
between the
bigger.
rails gets wider.
Yes. Yes.
All those great
Absolutely.
things. Hey,
All right, Rick, I know you have to do so much more to talk about, and
Oh yeah,
we're
I
going
know.
to do this again next week.
Yes, and I apologize if I think people got the idea a bit of where the
Absolutely.
and there's not a definitive the work, but it is the work. Like it's pointing
It's
towards
all of it.
go. Yeah, actually. So thank you everybody for joining us, and those that are watching the recording later. Please make a comment, share our channel with people if you got some value out of this. The more the merrier. And and thanks, Fati. It was
Thank you, Rick. It was
like
awesome talking to you again.
absolutely.
Now run.
Yeah, now run.